Well, earlier I spoke to Dhiren Katwar from the Asian Voice magazine in Birmingham. I began by asking him how worried he was that both young and old seem affected by these figures in the West Midlands.
Well, it's worrying, but I wouldn't be alarmed by these statistics, as it's not the first such survey, and it's not going to be the last either. But it's, as somebody who's grown up in Birmingham, a multicultural city as we know it, I have friends and colleagues from all walks of life and all ethnicities and all racial backgrounds. I must admit we get on fantastically well. So whilst the survey, I think, does show that 35% are racial prejudice, I think we need to take that with a slight pinch of salt, if I'm honest.
Do you think it's a chance that possibly people have always expressed racial prejudice rather quietly and privately, and now they're braver to do so? And in fact, there's always been 35% who feel that way. Well,
I think I do agree with that statement, actually, because with the sort of freedom of speech and with sort of more press freedom and people are sort of more tolerant, more aware of who they work with, live with, I think, racial prejudice has always been there, and it will be there. But I think we're more sort of aware to it now than ever before. So maybe it's a good thing that we know about it, but how do we counter these feelings? They can't be good long term. Surely they can't be. I think there are a lot of organisations and institutions which are actually putting a lot of spin on, on promoting themselves rather than promoting the benefits that would be useful for the wider community. So I would say, if so-called community leaders, if politicians, if the media, if we all work together to create more harmonious and less racially prejudiced sort of influences. And I think we all have a part to play in this. It's not just one factor. So together I think we can make a difference if we're honest to ourselves and help make a difference to all of us. Dhiren, thank you for joining us. You're very welcome.
It's coming up to 13 minutes past 6. The national and international news is about 15 minutes away, and Alistair Stewart has the headlines tonight.
Accused of plotting a coup to topple Nick Clegg, Lord Oakeshott quits the Lib Dems. The former Treasury spokesman paid for a poll that poured scorn on the party's prospects under Clegg. And now the man he backed, Vince Cable, is also implicated. Exclusive, ITV News understands Olympics mastermind Seb Coe is the front runner to take over as chair of the BBC.
So here we are, leaving Peru, jointly, happy days.
And One Direction, but is it up or down? As this video suggests, two of them smoke marijuana in Peru. Join Julie Etchingham and me at 6:30.
And later tonight on ITV, the latest edition of On Assignment. Raghi Omar has the details.
Join me this evening for On Assignment, when Lucy Watson reports from China on the 25th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. John Irvine is talking to Bollywood about tackling rape in India. And Rohit Kachru is wine tasting with one of South Africa's few black female winemakers. That's On Assignment here on ITV at 10:35.
Still ahead on our programme, how one family saved themselves £1,000 in just 6 weeks.
But first, on to sport, and Derby County have announced that local businessman Mel Morris has become a new owner and director at the club.
The 58-year-old, who's also a shareholder in the company behind the smartphone game Candy Crush, has taken a significant minority share in the club. Mr Morris was born in Derby and was previously a director at the club in 2006 and 2007.
Well, in a statement on the club's website, Mel Morris says he's delighted to be joining Derby County as a director, and he's looking forward to what is an exciting future. He went on, "I hope by coming on board I can further strengthen the incredibly positive position that the club enjoys both on and off the pitch."
Hereford United's chairman says the club hasn't officially heard from their former caretaker manager about his new appointment as head coach at Sutton United. David Keat has thanked Peter Beadle for his efforts at the club, but says he assumes Peter's also resigned from his position as Director of Youth, for which he remained under contract. The club's already received 20 applications for the manager vacancy at Edgar Street. Meanwhile, it's emerged that negotiations to enable a consortium of businessmen to take on a leading role within the club have reached a conclusion.
It's now 4 days until the biggest boxing match in British post-war history, the rematch between Carl Froch, who is from Nottingham and trained by Birmingham's Rob McCracken, and Londoner George Groves.
But this isn't the first time Froch has taken part in a high-profile rematch. It happened once before to the man who'd given Froch his first ever professional defeat.
Our sports correspondent Steve Clamp has been speaking exclusively to Mikkel Kessler to get the fighter's verdict.
Copenhagen, Denmark's capital city, where over a fifth of the nation's entire population reside. Beautiful architecture can be found at every turn. And then there's these statues. Danes certainly love their sculpture. Perhaps almost as much as they love their bikes. In this bustling city, more people commute by pedal power than in the whole of the United States of America. Quite something when you remember the country's population is less than a tenth of that of Great Britain. It might be a fairly small nation, but it's produced some pretty big sporting stars. Take Michael and Brian Laudrup, or how about Kasper and Peter Schmeichel? And then there's the tennis ace, Caroline Wozniacki. But perhaps nobody has quite reached the pinnacle of their sport like the 5 times world champion and first man ever to beat Carl Froch. Mikkel Kessler, the Viking warrior. One of Denmark's most loved sporting heroes and the first fighter ever to get the better of the Cobra. Well, Mikkel Kessler beat Carl Froch here in Denmark in 2010, and in boxing terms, that really put the cat amongst the pigeons. It was an epic battle going the full distance, both fighters putting everything on the line. But Kessler had the edge. Froch's unbeaten record was gone. And Carl would have to wait 3 years to avenge that. He did that in London at the O2 Arena. A sellout crowd saw another brutal contest. This time, though, it was the man from Nottingham who got the unanimous points decision. So there's no doubt these men fought out 2 of boxing's biggest battles. I've come to Denmark to speak to Kessler to find out what he thinks of Froch Groves, the rematch, the fight billed as the biggest in British boxing history. I was invited to Kessler's own personal gym. In honour of Carl, I challenged him to a duel of table tennis. Oh, getting... Oh. Now, that first meeting, Carl and George, it ended in controversial circumstances. Do you think there was the right winner? Do you think it was finished at the right time, that the referee got it right?
Referee probably will shoot what's wrong, and he probably heard too much rumor about he has not a good jaw and should have stopped the fight because his work is to take care of the fighter. But I would still say they probably should end the fight too fast. It's a big fight, 2 belts, and they should have let Groves been fighting at least 1 or 2 minutes more. So how do you see this rematch at Wembley Stadium going? Carl is more experienced. He can get down, come up, and get into the fight again. But I think he woke up now, Carl, and he probably trained in a different way. Groves, he got some. He could taste blood in the last fight, and I think he will come strong. And it's the hardest thing to say, who's going to win the fight, who's better than the other. Groves is a more hungry one. Froch has something to show now, so it'll be a massive fight. I'm looking forward to it. But what about Mikkel Kessler himself? Is there any chance that the 2 great warriors could meet again? Kessler, Froch, the 3rd fight. Your fans would love it. Carl's fans would love it. Would that ever happen? Is it possible? Of course, we have something to settle, but I'm still thinking about my future. Have a child now and have a responsibility. So not a no. But before any chance of that, Froch must face Groves. And with the big day approaching fast,
one final word from Mikkel to his old adversary.
Hey Carl, it's Mikkel Kessler from Denmark. I just want to wish you a good fight and good luck.
We'll second that. Anyway, yesterday, Carl Froch's challenger held an open training session in his home city of London. George Groves was greeted with a warm reception by his fans at the Shepherd's Bush shopping centre. And he says this time round, he's confident he'll beat the Cobra.
I certainly can. I don't feel I didn't get the decision, but I didn't lose the first fight. And this fight is picking up from the 9th round. Carl is in for a torrid time. I've prepared very well. Camp's gone great. Sometimes, everyone says it, but you feel it inside, and you just have to pick up on people's auras.
And we'll be continuing our build-up to the Froch-Groves rematch on the programme tomorrow night. Our sports correspondent Steve Clamp will be at Wembley Stadium for the press conference, which could well be another heated one. So stay tuned to ITV News Central's coverage here and on our website, itv.com/central.